Hello, Dave.
Who?
Who? You.
Me. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Good to see you today.
Me too.
Happy
Oh, wait.
episode number something. I don't remember what number this is. 17, 18? I think it's 18.
Could be.
So we're jumping in. We're redoing. We're digging out some old notes of yours from a series called Way of the Rabbi that you did in the 2000s. We thought 2007, I think it was, right?
2005. Yeah.
2005.
Yeah, I went further back than that.
Well,
Yep.
I mean, your series usually lasts a little while.
Yeah. A couple hours.
Just a few hours. So we're talking through some of your Way of the Rabbi study and how Jesus doesn't call us just to be agreeers or understanders, but when he called his disciples, he said, "Come, follow me." But there's some differences in this word follow during this modern age. For a lot of us, following, we think, is like this like and subscribe button. It's looking at somebody. But Jesus calls us to something more, to follow him, to, as you talked about in this first episode of The Way of the Rabbi, to carry his yoke, to follow his way of life. So that's what he's calling us to, not just to be likers and subscribers, but to learn how to do our life like he did his. So the question here is, how are you going to keep engaging with your faith? What is God asking us to do during this time? We've been asking these questions. What does it move? When the society is shifting and our lives are shifting, so we can look to Jesus, our rabbi, to tell us how we must live our lives. We're looking back at the rabbinical tradition, as you've talked about that in that first episode. So will you kick us off? And
Sure. Well, first of all, I really appreciated that distinction you just made, because you made it at the end of our last recording about fans. Like there's Facebook friends, and I'm a fan, and I'm a follower. I follow the Chicago Cubs, which means every morning I look and see what they. But I'm observing. I'm just a fan. That's not what we mean. I'm glad that distinction was made, and it does bring us back to that rabbinic tradition, which we began to unpack last time, where in Jesus' day, the rabbis would, after this, I explained this big educational system they had, they would come to a point where particularly boys, sorry, it was that way then, but they would have gone through the two first phases of education. They would have memorized the entire Old Testament, all of the Torah, but also learn to interact with it in that rabbinic way of asking questions and then giving the answer with another question and that whole thing. And then the really good ones would, like a kid going to college, would start wanting to apply to go to Harvard or Yale or Bethel or something. And they would literally look at or consider certain rabbis that they would kind of apply to, as if that rabbi himself was a school. And you didn't get in automatically. You had to apply. And the rabbi would assess whether you had what it took or not. And this was fascinating too, because it wasn't, everybody at this level who was applying to follow a rabbi or be accepted by a rabbi was sharp. They were smart, but they were looking for more than that. The rabbi was looking for someone who can perpetuate my way, someone who can take into the next generation when I'm gone and kind of continue my interpretation of the text, my way of living out the text. So I'm looking for people who can become like me as a rabbi and keep that going. So that's what's behind the whole rabbinic tradition. And if a rabbi, so you're a 16-year-old kid, come to the rabbi and trying to prove your mettle, if the rabbi said, "I will accept you and you can come follow me," they would say these magic words that would be like, "Oh, I made it." They were lachacharai, come follow me. And that even unpacked it more in the other one, when in Matthew 4, Jesus saw Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew's brother mending nets. And he said, "Come follow me." He said, "Lachacharai." Immediately they left. And it wasn't because they had a weird experience and just kind of automatically started following him robotically. But this was a rabbi who had said, "You have what it takes to become like me, to take my yoke." And the yoke is not this like two oxen the yoke is that was the name for their way of interpreting scripture and Torah and how we live this out in the world. And if you were one of those Talmudim, those disciples, you would, I mean, it went to ridiculous lengths at times where these younger, I mean, everything the rabbi did, they'd want to do. They'd go to the bathroom the same way. They would, you know, it would just be bizarre. But everywhere you went, I want to go. Everything you do, I want to do. The dust of the rabbi, that whole thing, they would follow so close that they would be covered. That was the phrase. They would be covered with the dust of the rabbi, which I love. When Peter got out of the boat, remember Jesus was walking on water, and Peter says, "Lord, bid me come." That just sounds like a bizarre thing. Only impulsive Peter would do that. It's not as bizarre as you think when you think about this. If my rabbi is doing that, I want to do that. If he's like that, I mean, that's part of what's behind some of this. And so we wanted to get to today, out kind of spinning off of all of that, were two questions. One is, if it's about following his way, how far are we willing to follow? I've got a lot of stuff to say about that, and we've talked about that for years, because that's a really good question. Yes, I'll follow. Yes, but how far are you willing to follow? Do that more next week, because I think this first question sets that question up. We're ready to get into that question after this one, and it's really more basic. It is, who is your rabbi to begin with? So separate, not like wait. Before you talk about how far you're going to follow, who's your rabbi? You're going to get that?
I don't know.
That's okay.
Hello? No. Keep going.
Okay. Are we still on?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's fascinating to me about that question is that we all have one. I mean, you know, who's your rabbi? Well, you have one. And the other way to ask it is, to whom, consciously or unconsciously, a lot of times unconsciously, to whom have you given authority? From whom do you gather information about life and how you live it? How life works? Who are the people who have influence over you? What are the influences over your mind? What you think is cool? What you think is wise? Who's your rabbi? That's what's behind that whole question, because you've seen how they live. And I may be talking about people you see on TV or some rock star. You see how they live, and maybe you want some of that, whatever it is, and maybe it's really bad for you, but it doesn't matter. It's what you want. Well, they're your rabbi. That's who you're going to follow. That's what you want to go after. You've seen how they do their life. You see how they treat people. You see how they handle adversity. You see their practices, like how the rhythms of their life. This one's an easy one, because if you're an athlete and you want to be like a pitcher, okay, there's this. You study their way. You study how he holds the ball. You study how he trains. You want to do what he does. Because you want to get to that kind of thing. So, who's your rabbi? Who are those people in your life? You're going, I'd like to be. It's as simple as who you want to be like.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Okay. But I think it can get. I think the question can be unpacked for people if you just think about it in three areas: money, sex, power. I think those are the big three. There's a lot of subcategories in every one of those, but money, how do you handle money? How much do you think you need? Is it all for you? How generous? I mean, there's also, so who teaches you about that? Who's your rabbi about that? Maybe some selfish idiot is, and you just want to get more. Okay, well, that's who your rabbi is. Okay. Mm-hmm. Sex, maybe your rabbi is Madonna. I don't know, really good idea. Not so much. Anyway, that kind of thing. Same thing with power. We could talk about power, and that's even the power dynamics we see in the polarization around politics right now. People fighting about mask, no mask, all that kind of stuff. It's fascinating, but that really gets down to, I got to have my way. Okay, well, where'd you get that? Because you're not following. Who's your rabbi in that?
Yeah.
And maybe it would be helpful to quit saying it's Jesus. Quit saying that, because it's not, or it is. But I think it's a fascinating thing, because that's a pretty significant thought virus. Just wonder about that. When I'm acting, anyway. Yeah, what dust is on me right now when I'm acting like a total selfish jerk, which I never do, but it's a hypothetical thing. A word about authority. Okay, just take those thoughts and put them over there. To whom have you given authority? In Matthew 7, this is a phrase you're going to be familiar with, because people would say this all the time when they would meet Jesus, that they were, among other responses, they were amazed they spoke with authority. And, you might, that what comes to your mind is just, he was authority. He was like, sure, or something like that. But then they add, and not like the scribes and Pharisees. So they were amazed that he spoke with authority. And the word authority there is a fascinating one, because when he's saying that, when the people said he speaks with authority and not like the scribes and Pharisees, he wasn't saying the scribes and Pharisees don't have authority, or they don't know what they're talking about, they're idiots. He wasn't saying that. This word authority was shmiha. Remember that?
Yeah.
And it had to do with the fact that most scribes and Pharisees did something that was just actually respected and trusted. And it was that they didn't come with their own authority. They were remember, the way you would become a rabbi is you would take on another rabbi's yoke and you would perpetuate their way. And so that rabbi is gone, and now I'm the scribe. Now I'm the rabbi guy. And I'm quoting my rabbi. I'm bringing to you, and I'm saying what I say with the authority I borrowed from that other rabbi. And that might sound weak to you. That's not what Jesus is saying. It's actually something that would build trust, because, okay, you don't think you know everything. You are deferring to wisdom past, and something that was from the past that was tried and true, was something we could trust. So they would quote, Rabbi, that was a rabbi named that.
Yeah, was it?
Yeah. And it says, and then you would quote that rabbi, and, there would be this acceptance or not acceptance, but that's the authority you would have. And every once in a while, a rabbi would come along who would have their own voice. And they would have their own yoke. It wasn't a yoke that they got from another rabbi, and there's nothing wrong with that. But someone would come along and they would have their own authority, not borrowing it from someone else. They would have shmiha. That's what that was. And so now you hear the verse, and it sounds a little different way. They were amazed that because he spoke as one having shmiha, his own yoke, his own voice, and not like the scribes and Pharisees who were always borrowing, like a lawyer would like a good example would be a lawyer in court. They don't have authority. They will cite precedent. They will cite things of the past that give what I'm saying right here authority. And every once in a while, someone would come along and say, no, I have my own shmiha. I have my own yoke. A good example of this is another familiar text where Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount says, you have heard that the ancients have said. What's he doing? The ancients are the past, reliable voices. You have heard from the ancients, you shall not commit murder. Good idea. But I say is shmiha. But I'm going to take that, I'm going to go deeper with it. But I say it's not just about murder, it's about anger. You have heard from the ancients, don't commit adultery. Good idea. But I say, we need to talk about lust. You have heard it said, love your neighbor. But I say, love your enemy. You want to talk about that? But I say part is shmiha. Who on earth would do that? I think we're more familiar with this than we know. Even at a very simple thing, you could reflect on something that you thought of when you were a kid. As a kid, I used to think, but now I think you have a different yoke now. That's not wisdom to you anymore. There's a new kind of wisdom. I've done it in sermons. A lot, I think, a lot of people look at this particular verse and they say this, but I say that. And I may be wrong, and some people would go, wow, he's got his own voice. And that is a way we find our voice. Like, okay, everybody thinks this, but I say, that's shmiha. Got it, right?
Yeah.
Parents know about this. I hope you know about this. Because,
We'll see.
your kid comes up to you and you say, I know a lot of your friends. think this and they think that, and you should be able to do this and you should be able to do that. But I say, they're idiots. What I say, and I think parents, you really need to find your shmiha. I mean, this isn't, that's what my point is, this is not that foreign thing. You need to find your shmiha. You need to do, well, that's what Jesus had, and that's what people were drawn to. But it wasn't only people coming because there were some who were going, wow, this is a new voice. I want to hear that voice. So the multitudes would come. But there are also people coming to these gatherings when this guy with shmiha came along who were very suspicious of the voice. Like anything new, and it's to be deferential now to the Pharisees, good. This has not, who are you? And they would test him. And some of them did it in a really angry, mean way because they hated him and he was a threat to them, and they were. But there's something underneath that isn't all that bad. That this new thing does need to be poked at a little bit. And so some people were drawn because there was this new thing. Others would come to, in some ways, try to discredit this shmiha that he's got because new is suspect. So there's this one incident in Luke chapter 2, or 20 rather, verse 2. And they come to Jesus and they say, by what authority are you doing, there's the word, by what authority are you doing what you're doing and saying what you're saying? And what they're asking him is, where'd you get your shmiha? And he answers and says, where'd John get his? wait, what a smart aleck. I'm thinking everything, where'd you get your authority? Well, I don't know, where'd you get yours? And I don't know, but what are you? I mean, I know you are, but what am I? Mm-hmm. So where'd John get his shmiha? Because everybody thought John had shmiha, his own voice. Mm-hmm. And then he asked, and this is what got the Pharisees, was it from heaven or from man? Where'd John get a shmiha, from man or from heaven? And here was their dilemma. Because if they say that John got a shmiha from man, then what they're gonna be very mad at him because they thought John was more than that. So if we say, well, it was from man, that would be minimizing his shmiha, and so they're going to stone us. We don't want the multitude to get mad at us. But if we say he got a shmiha from God, the multitude is going to go, then why didn't you believe him? Why didn't you follow him? So there was no way to answer that question, and they didn't answer the question. In fact, they said, we don't know. And so that, by the way, when we talked last week about the rabbinic thing that Jesus did, because he got that thing from the rabbinic tradition of answering a question with another question, that is an incredible example of him shutting them up, winning the thing that way. And so anyway, that was the end of that. And it just brings me back to this whole thing. So who's your rabbi? And I would just end with this quote that we were talking about earlier. Do you have any questions or anything on that thing?
No, I just keep going. Do the quote.
Okay. Yeah. This is Dallas Willard, and he says this amazing thing about in Divine Conspiracy about Jesus, that at the literally mundane level, Jesus knew how to transform the molecular structure of water to wine. That knowledge also allowed him to take a few pieces of bread and fish and feed thousands of people. He could create matter from the energy he knew how to access from the heavens. He knew how to transform the tissues of the human body from sickness to health, from death to life, in the ethical domain. He had an understanding of life and how it works that has influenced world thought more than any other. He explained to his followers that in the moment of crisis, he could have called 72,000 angels to set him free. No one takes my life. I lay it down. The Father and I have worked all this out. Fact is, and this is the culmination of his quote, all these things show Jesus' cognitive and practical mastery of every phase of reality, physical, moral, spiritual, and ethical. He is master only because he is maestro. Indeed, Jesus is Lord can mean little in practice for anyone who has to hesitate before also saying Jesus is brilliant and might be worth following. Which raises the question, who's your rabbi?
Mm. Yeah.
Yep.
It's the who are you following? It's what we were talking about before, and not just following. Who are you mimicking your life after?
Who do you want to be like?
You? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who do you want to be like? And where are you getting your shmiha? You know, what dust is on you? You mentioned something when we were talking earlier that no one takes my life, I get to lay it down, right? That's what Jesus said. No one's going to take his life from him. He is laying his life down for us.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
Yeah,
so if we want to talk about things that don't change, and things that don't move, this rabbi of ours, we can be followers, or we can be followers, right? And which one do you want to be?
And I think it'll be great to talk next time now I think you understand why this one before the next one is good, because now it's like, so how far do you want to follow? It's how much does this really bleed into every dimension of life and things like that. So
Yep.
Anyway,
thanks everyone. I hope you're enjoying our little Way of the Rabbi revamp 2.0.
Yeah,
we'd come up with some fancy name if we could, but it's good to talk to you all, and we hope you have a great day.
Bye.
See ya.